All right, so this week in the workshop, we've got another spectacular juniper that we're working on. This one's a little bit different than the tree that I featured in the first episode of In the Workshop. This tree, I believe, is actually a Procumbens trunk. So a Juniperus procumbens that was collected in the mountains in Japan and then grafted with a very fine Itoigawa foliage. The foliage is also slightly different than the foliage on the first tree that we worked on, although I do think it definitely is Itoigawa foliage, and it's still likely from the same nursery, Mr. Iura's nursery, but I could be wrong about that. But what makes me think that this is a Procumbens trunk is the type of deadwood, the characteristics to the deadwood, and the fact that it has a lot of movement in the live vein right from the base of the tree. That's usually a dead giveaway that the tree is actually a Procumbens that was collected and then grafted afterwards. So the work that we're doing on the tree right now is basically just refining the plant, detail wiring it, getting it back in shape. As you can see, it's a giant bush at this point, but I'm going through and actually wiring a majority of the branches and putting them back in place. This type of work actually really reminds me of my experiences at Fujikawa Koken in Japan, where I did my apprenticeship. This is a type of work that we would do on a daily basis, day after day after day, from sunup until sundown, detail wiring, really highly refined, high quality plants like this. So we're actually going to be featuring this in an upcoming episode of Bonsai U on our members only platform. So if you're interested in watching and seeing how I style a plant like this and the mechanics behind wiring and pad placement, definitely check that out. There'll be a link in the description down below. So I was asked by the fine people at the American Bonsai Society Journal to put together a few displays in our tokonoma here and take photos of those for the magazine. And ideally, we're trying to get a really good photo for the cover of the magazine. So I'm bringing in a bunch of trees here to switch out with our scrolls and different stands to see if we can come up with a good format for the cover. But I wanted to show you this guy in particular right here and this setup here, because this is a pretty special tree to me, and I think this setup is pretty cool. So this tree I actually got my first year as an apprentice in Japan. It's a Chinese quince, and when I picked it up, it originally had no branches on it at all. So I've been working on it basically over the last, 12 years, 12, 13 years, something like that. And it's finally starting to come along. It's starting to look really, really good. I actually picked up this scroll a few years back in Japan, and the scroll says, "Never relinquish your original passion," which I thought was fitting for using this tree with this display. You know, because this tree kind of reminds me of my first experiences in Japan, starting out as an apprentice, and how excited I was at that time when I began my apprenticeship. So 12, 13 years later now, having my own nursery here in the States, keeping this kind of mantra in mind, I think is a really good thing for, keeping the nursery moving forward here in the States and really sort of keeping that passion alive as we move forward into the future.
All right, I'm doing a little cleanup on this, what is this, like a quiche? And, making the pads tighter, putting branches in place, and now I'm just cleaning up the trunk so it looks ready to sell.
So earlier this year when the pandemic started, we had to kind of change our business model here at Eisei-en. Originally we were doing a lot of classes with our intensive groups that were coming in multiple times a year, but of course we had to cancel all of that as soon as the pandemic hit in March of this year. So, for the remainder of the summer, we kind of had to figure out what we were going to be doing at Eisei-en to keep the nursery afloat. And as you can see, we kind of shifted the model to more of our online shop. And that's something I wanted to do for a really long time, but we really just didn't have the opportunity or the time to do it. But, this coronavirus thing really allowed us to kind of reset ourselves here. And as you can see on this side of the workshop here, we've got all of our packing materials. So we ship out trees and pots and tools, all through the week. Most of the trees will go out on Mondays just to make sure that they're getting to their final location in the US by Friday of that same week. But we'll ship out everything else during the course of the week as well. So this is kind of taken up a big chunk of our time, but it's kept us afloat, which is great. Alrighty.